Hey guys, I'm Nashwa. Welcome back to my channel. I'm sitting at my desk right now because I have to start work in about 27 minutes. And I thought I'd make a really chatty review and a really chatty video, something that I haven't done in a while. Because when I do my wrap-ups, I keep my laptop with me. But off the top of my head, I feel the need to have a discussion about authors weighing into your reviews on Goodreads. And this is something that I experienced yesterday, and I didn't even see the comment of the author up until much later because Goodreads notifications are broken. So I don't really get notified for people who comment unless I go and see it. So I actually get emails from Goodreads about people leaving me comments, and I hardly ever read them except the author commented. So I was like, oh, I wonder what she has to say. I imagine it couldn't have been anything good because I gave the book 1 star and it was a Pakistani book. So I felt really strange about the author weighing in, but because her comment was a little strange and she didn't really need to leave the comment, and I'll explain why in a bit, I am not going to give her any press or publicity in this particular video. I don't feel the need to because her comment was a little snarky, and I'll just talk about that in a bit. But if you're wondering what the book is, I'll leave the cover on the screen for 5 seconds, not more than that, and I'll black out her name because honestly, her comment was just a little weird. So basically, on this 1 star book, I left a very detailed rant review because rant reviews are my right as a reader. So she basically says, thank you for taking out the time to read my book. You're welcome. And if you want to be taken seriously though, try and avoid using curses and spoilers in your reviews. Now, I don't know if it's me, but that kind of sounds like you're a little bit hurt and you sound really bitchy because I'm not trying to do anything. I'm not trying to be taken seriously. You wrote a book, I wrote a review, and that was it. I feel very strange about authors weighing in on their readers' reviews because I feel like it's a strange concept. First of all, as a reader, I have every right to criticize a book if I don't like it. If I want to use a curse word, which I think I used a total of 1 curse word, I have every right to do that. I shouldn't be lectured by authors, but they also need to have a thick skin because people will review their books and the book is not good. People will say bad things about it. That's just something that they have to get used to. And I feel like it also comes across as very petty, like you're trying to take it personally with me, while I said nothing personal in my review about you. I mean, I roasted the shit out of your book, I'm not gonna lie about that, but I didn't say that, oh, you need to be taken seriously. But now that you commented, I did say that if you want to be taken seriously as a writer, maybe you need to write a better book. Because I feel like if I tell you that I read this book and I loved it and someone else spends their hard-earned money and they read a book that turns out to be really shitty, I'm the one to blame because my channel is growing. I'm over 1,000 subscribers now and people do take me a little seriously. The number of people who have told me that they've picked up Ice Candy Man or Cracking India because of me, and it honestly makes me feel good that people listen to my recommendations, and I don't want to recommend anything to you that is not worth your time. So I feel like that was just a really strange experience. So if you want to pick this book up of your own accord, please do. You can look up the synopsis on Goodreads. I'll have my review linked below because I always have my Goodreads linked below. But if you end up giving it 1 star, she might actually run to your mom and tell on you because and might even actually lecture you on language. So if my face looks a little brighter, it's because I've turned on my computer and the lighting's there, and I'm going to move to this side so I can insert the review here. So I'm going to walk you through my review. I'm going to tell you exactly what I said and why I said it, and I stand by it that if a book is bad, don't read it. There are many other books that you could read, and I honestly read this book because I wanted to distract myself from the news cycle because news in Pakistan has been heartbreaking. It's been a very taxing week for all of us. Everyone I know has been crying and being really stressed about the kind of incidents that we're seeing on the news. So I read this book because I wanted to distract myself. So let's start with the review. I start by saying that, this year I was on a mission to read Pakistani books to improve my relationship with them. And I've picked up some really good books over the last month, but this book has defeated me. I don't want to read such stories in 2020, and I don't want to pick up another Pakistani book again. But before you react, now this is a part of my overall review, that before you react, let me be clear that as a Pakistani reader, I hold Pakistani writers to a higher standard because I know they have potential. And I stand by that. I've read some really good books over the last month, and I'll leave a card to my latest video where I talked about 8 Pakistani books that I read. So I expect a higher standard because I know that they can write better books. But unfortunately, this is not what I expect from a new generation of writers, because this book is a 2020 release. Like, I think it was released a couple of months ago. So I expect crisp storytelling, characters that resemble real life human beings, and set in a Pakistan which is realistically looks like the country that we live in today. Now my question is that too much to ask for, to have a realistic book set in a country which looks like ours? Because I've talked about this multiple times, that the books that we're seeing are not really representative of us as a country. And it's funny because I give books low ratings all the time if I don't like them. It's not something I do out of like spite, but if it's not good, it's not good. So when I gave like The Reluctant Fundamentalist 2 stars, like Mohsen Hamid didn't leave a petty comment under my review. And when I gave Sarwat Haseen on This White Night a 1 star, like she didn't seek me out and tell me that no one would take me seriously. Like, I think that's just weird. I go on to say that I was drawn to this book because I thought it would talk about modern day parenthood, raising kids in this day and age. A story revolving around that would have just been fine with me. So right there is wasted potential, because we have like these families, like multiple families, and they have like multiple kids, and we're like understanding that the kids are going through a lot of pressure at school and they have to compete with each other, and the parents are not taking it easy on them. But like none of that is explored. So I just say that is wasted potential right there. Another arc that the author briefly touched upon is the mental illness, and I would have loved for her to do a deep dive on anxiety. Sometimes human beings have anxiety because they get bogged down by real life situations such as work, family, trying to be a good person, and constantly watching the news. Anxiety can exist without major trauma. So that's the point that I was trying to make. It's very much a part of my review, and I feel like it's a very critical point that anxiety can exist without major trauma. And I say that because I suffer from anxiety occasionally. Like this past week, like I mentioned, the news has been giving me the worst of anxiety. Like it's debilitating to a point where I was crying. I was not handling life well. I also get extremely anxious on airports and around, like when I have to board a plane. I don't know what triggers it, but there's something about, being in that environment which gives me severe anxiety. And I've never, thank God for that, never faced extreme trauma in my life. So she talks about anxiety, and there's a point in this book where I actually appreciate the fact that she talks about this anxiety, because this character who's suffering from it seems to be bogged down by her marital situation. Her husband isn't really allowed her to work, and she seems to be like, under a lot of pressure, and that's a very legit cause for anxiety. But then we have something that developed in the story which was so ridiculous that I ended up writing this in my review, and I think this is the thing that the author didn't like. So I continue. Sometimes human beings have anxiety because they get bogged down by real life situations such as work, family, etc. Anxiety can exist without major trauma, but a character in this book had anxiety because 11 years ago she had a drunken one-night stand, got pregnant as a 17-year-old, gave birth, and then promptly gave the child up for adoption. All mentioned in the span of half a page. What the actual fuck? Like, I think that's the only curse word I used, and it's because the situation is so beyond ridiculous. First of all, Pakistani writers, if you somehow come across this review, you need to get over the fact that Pakistan does not allow public consumption of alcohol, and we are just obsessed with this phenomena of talking about booze in our books. I've said this in many videos that it's not cool, it's not interesting, it's honestly really exhausting to read about. And also, like, the scene that I'm going to describe now, so this is a spoiler in case you for some reason want to pick up this book. Like, you can leave now, but you can still read it if knowing what the book is about. But in this particular scene, we have a girl. Her name, I think, is Minahil. So Minahil is a character, and she has never had booze before in her life, and she is a virgin. So she hasn't drunk and she hasn't ever had sex. And in this particular scene, first of all, there's peer pressure because the girls are pressuring her to drink Bacardi, I think. Like, she uses all these names of alcohol, and she starts drinking. So not only does she have like 1 glass or 2 glass, she has alcohol, an entire bottle of alcohol, without losing her senses, because that's so realistic. Then she goes on to have another bottle of alcohol, because how are you still alive? And then she has, thankfully, consensual sex with someone, and then she ends up getting pregnant, all in the span of half a page. And when she finds out, she has this one-night stand, she gets pregnant, then she tells her mom, and her mom ships her off into a different part of the country so she could give birth. And this is interesting because Bakhtawar and I from Book Bakht, we always have this conversation about Pakistani books that even though it's fiction, even though it's make-believe, like, can you make it a little realistic? And I think we give the example of, look at all those like sci-fi worlds, right? Like they haven't existed, but they feel like they have because they're so well written. And honestly, like when I read this part of the book, I was asking myself, like, which Pakistan is this? Like, this is a modern time that you've depicted. Where in Pakistan does a single unwed woman go to give birth and then promptly give it up for an adoption agency, with the society like not raising an eyebrow? Like, where does this happen? Maybe very rarely, but come on, man. Like, we know the reality that we live in. Like in Pakistan, if you put on like half a kilo, aunties will come to you and ask you why you've put on weight. So you're telling me that this 17-year-old gave birth to a whole child and no one knew and no one cared, and her body didn't change, nothing changed, she just moved on with her life and everything was okay, to the point that she ended up marrying someone else without like revealing her secret. And I think that's quite, if you ask me, like it's something that it's very unrealistic. So then I mentioned that apart from that, this book is quite messy because we follow 3 couples and 5 children, and all of them are cardboard cutouts, cliches, stereotypes, and just uninteresting people. So here I'm going to describe some of the characters to you. This book follows 3 couples and 5 children. So 2 of the couples have 2 kids, one of them has 1, and then one of the husbands is having an affair with another woman. So we are dealing with 6 adults and 5 children. And for a book that's like 250 pages, like that is just really messy. Like, I don't know how you make sense of that. So in the first couple, we basically have a woman who runs a textile company, and she is doing really well, and you know, the company is successful, and she has married someone who is, you know, not as good as her. So he is beneath her in the company and she's his boss. So he's feeling insecure and intimidated, and that is such like a South Asian Pakistani man trait to have. Like, if a woman is more successful, you automatically feel insecure. Cliche. Then this man ends up having an affair with someone else in his office. Cliche. Then his wife finds out, and then she throws him out of the house, and he goes to his best friend and he cries. Like, why can't you just own up to your mistakes and say that like you screwed up, you never meant for it to happen, this and that? He goes and he cries because he didn't realize what was coming. Like, he never thought that his wife would find out. And if that's not a cliched man in a cliched book, like, I don't know how else to describe it. So yeah, and the lady that he's having an affair with, she's like another one of those cliched woman who has like short hair because she's cool and she lives on her own. And you know, when the guy breaks up with, like, his wife kicks him out, and then he ends up breaking up with her because, you know, he was in the marriage for money. She goes on to say that, why do I have so many misfortunes in life? Like, my parents are dead, and you know, this happened, that happened. Like, you had an affair with a married man. How is this a misfortune? Like, you made a decision and it affected your life. Like, this is not a misfortune that life has thrown at you. Like, you acted and now you're facing consequences. Like, how is this not clear? So the other couple that we have is the woman who was suffering from anxiety, and I thought she was very relatable until we realized that she has a secret child and her husband's pressurizing her. And then we have the third couple. Now, if this is getting all too convoluted for you, it was honestly getting convoluted for me too, because let's face it, the book is really messy. So in the third couple, there's a very money hungry and conniving salon owner who hates the rich ladies. And she literally uses the word self-important and pretentious bitch for her, and that's the author lecturing me on language. And she also uses the word conniving bitch so many times. Like, how is this even a real book? So then I go on to say that if you followed all of that, congratulations, because honestly, like, if you kept up with me, congratulations. But in all honesty, this book reads like a Star Plus drama from the early 2000s, Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki, come alive on the page. Now, if you're for some reason not familiar with Star Plus, like, it's basically Bollywood TV shows. And they're supremely over dramatic, and they have the sound effects, and you know, they have an aura. And when I was in school, I feel like around maybe O levels or something, like 15, 16, those TV shows were all the rage. Like, there was no proper Pakistani TV shows we had at the time, and I think now we have much better ones. But the Star Plus dramas were all the rage, and it was literally really cheesy dialogue, random people having affairs, and then random people having illegitimate kids and being super rich and just being like superfluous. And is superfluous the right word? Like, flamboyant is what I mean. So this book basically read like that, because from everything I told you, like, you would literally be better off if you like turn on YouTube and look for Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki, because that's what this book read like. Also, another thing that I pointed out in my review is like most of this book is based around like this party lifestyle, and like sex and affairs are implied obviously, but they're done in a very tame way. And my point was that if you're going to talk about these things, why don't you explore a little more and give us that gritty content? Because like I know Pakistani books can be very explicit, like Mohsin Hamid when he writes about, mud smoke, it's quite explicit. And as much as I don't like Mohsin Hamid other work, I always say that I stand by Mud Smoke because it's really like, it's one of the best books in that genre, because when he talks about drugs and, all this like sexual encounters that he has, he really gets into it. So basically this book reads like, and this happened and that happened and this happened and that happened. And honestly, like, that's not good storytelling. And then I wrote that the idea behind this book is essentially this: a bunch of really good looking people who all have tragic backstories and have been with each other at some point. Because even though the voices of the characters sounded the same, like we did not miss the fact that they were all supremely good looking. Now, another thing that I pointed out was the alcohol consumption in this book. And no, not what alcohol consumption does to your body, to your relationship, how it could possibly have an effect on your health, your work, like that could be one of your reasons for anxiety. We get a laundry list of every type of alcohol. And I feel like while the author was writing this book, she basically said, Siri, give me a list of alcohol names. And Siri promptly gave her all the names. And then the author basically used them and sprinkled them around in her draft because, I've never heard like so many names thrown at me. Bacardi, Chardonnay, white wine, vodka, whiskey, gin and tonic. I mean, in all likelihood, this is what happened. I don't know about author's knowledge of extensive alcohol abuse, but like to me, it just felt like you were name dropping to make a point that this book is really cool and really out there, but it's honestly not. But I feel like when the author left me a main comment, she forgot that I also critically talked about some of the points about this book, which were the fact that this book was not edited. I don't understand how publishers are like skipping on a major part of books, which is basically editing the shit that people give you. Like typos, spelling mistakes, grammatical errors are my biggest pet peeve, and I feel like I look at those things because I work in a place which requires me to really critically analyze a document. So when I look at it in a book, the mistakes just jump out at me, right? So there's a time when she says instead of saying she thought, it says she though, because they missed the T at the end. And there's a lot of like technical mistakes in the sense that we start a scene with a woman driving. Her husband is in the passenger seat, and during the scene they have an argument. I can't remember what it was about, but at the end of the scene we reach the house, and then it says that Bilal parked his car next to a big Mercedes or something, and I'm confused, like how did he get behind the wheel? Like, wasn't she the one driving? Like, at no point does it say that she stopped the car and they exchanged. Like, it makes no sense. Like, it literally makes no sense. So my only saving grace from this book is that like it was a library book. That's why I'm not holding it up, because I returned it, I sent it back, and I'm really glad that I don't have to be burdened with its existence. And I'm not even trying to be mean here, like I am maybe a little bit, but I unhauled over 120 books this year. Like, that's a lot of books, and I just don't want to keep shit that I don't like. So I'm sorry if my language offended the author. You wrote a book, it's out there in the world, and reviewers will write whatever the hell they want to. Like, you really can't stop them. And if your book is out in the world, people will like it, people will love it, people will also criticize it, and people will write rant reviews about it, like I did. So I think it's time for me to check my email and get on with my day. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.